Hey guys, and welcome to a brand new week of the Ttr UK Session coming to you live on YouTube. My name's Jeff Pine, coming to you from Tasmania in Australia, and I'll be joined very, very shortly by Ash, who will be coming to us from Brighton in the UK. Let's start off by having a look at some data events coming out this week and what they are likely to bring us. Let's start with today. Really, the only high impact news that has been flagged by the Forex Factory is telling us that Mr. Mario Draghi will speak at 6 p.m. UK time, which is about 10 and a half hours away from now. Let me see what he's talking about. Oh, this is the ECB forum on central banking. Okay, we had a little bit of a forecast of that. Well, preview. Preview wasn't even that. We had a sneak peek last week at this upcoming thing. So we've got Mario talking to. In fact, he's delivering opening remarks. So I doubt that the market will be hanging too much on that, but you just never know. He might sneak something out that the market reacts to. We'll wait and see on that one. I should be asleep around about that time, so it won't be too concerning to me. At it's all speeches, really. A lot of speeches this week, actually, given that we've got the Fed, of course, on Wednesday with their, and interesting, we'll get to that in a sec. We've got the monetary policy meeting minutes coming out tomorrow morning, most people's time, on the last RBA meeting. That, of course, saw an interest rate cut on the Aussie. It'll be interesting to see what the full meeting was about. I'll have a good read of that tomorrow at some stage. With Draghi speaking again tomorrow at 9 a.m. UK time. This will be the same event, of course, and that's where he will deliver his keynote speech surrounding, I guess his final, pretty much, certainly addressed to those sorts of people as he bows out in November. Interesting to hear what he has to say about the past, the present, and the future, I guess. A lot of low interest, if you like, UK news coming out tomorrow as well. Prior to Carney, the Bank of England's governor, Mark Carney, will talk tomorrow, I assume, at the same event. In fact, at a panel discussion in the forum on central banking that's taking place this week. So that particular forum could deliver some interesting news. I would like to think that the pound might get some form of push. It's just having a shocker. The pound in data releases, news events, and is once again under extreme pressure and fighting to stay above the, I won't say the last line of defence, but it's certainly a very, very tenuous grip that it has on the support level at the moment. We shall see if it can catch a bit at some stage. CPI figures coming out on Wednesday for that particular currency. And then, of course, the bigger news comes up later in that day. Again, we've got Draghi speaking again, I would think, at the press, at the forum. We've got CPI coming out on the CAD on Wednesday as well. But the headline event is, of course, the Fed funds rates and the FOMC statement, which will be released at 7 p.m. UK time on Wednesday evening. That, of course, for most of us will be early hours of Thursday morning. And interesting that, according to the Forex Factory, the Fed is going to remain at the 2.5% handle. I don't know that the economists around the world were forecasting that last week. Last week, everyone was kind of hinting that we were going to 2.25 at least. That's all very interesting. We'll see how that how the commentary around that pans out in the next 24, 48 hours, of course, before that release is made on Wednesday, 7 p.m., as I said. And we've got GDP figures coming out on the Kiwi. We've got Philip Lowe speaking early Thursday morning. What's he talking about? The labour markets and spare capacity at the Committee for the Economic Development of Australian Lunch. Actually, there's interesting words he was using in the RBA statement about the spare capacity. What should I call it? Phenomenon? I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to get a handle on what he's actually talking about there with spare capacity. I guess it means that there's room to move, and that's kind of what I read into the statement anyway. But that'll be interesting as well to see what he has to say on that. And the Aussie, a lot of people bullish the Aussie at the moment, and I still can't really fathom why that would be the case. But it does seem to be the case. MPS monetary policy statement on the yen on Thursday, tentative as always, and the BOG press conference tipped for nothing to happen with the policy rate, of course. That will remain negative at 0.1. Retail sales not tipped to be great coming out of Great Britain. Wow. That's all they need is more bad news, and it's pretty official. One would think that we're not going to see an official bank rate change from 0.75% at this point in time. And of course, we've got things hanging over our head. Carney again speaking on Thursday, and Friday will wrap it all up with a lot of manufacturing PMI news coming out and core retail sales in Canada. Of course, there will be the usual Trumpies tweets. There will be all sorts of things going on around the world, not least will be US versus Iran, perhaps. We'll see how that bubbles over. We've also got the ongoing trade wars. They haven't been resolved. And all sorts of various things going on around the world, as always. So the major events appear to be Wednesday, and later in the week we'll be looking for the tide maybe to increase or turn. Let us see. Casting our eyes towards currencies at the moment. We'll start with the poor old pound, shall we? My long-term speculator on this weekly chart, which was trading this candle here, looks to be a fizzer at the moment, and we're really, as I say, the pound having a very, very tough time under fire with all sorts of economic announcements, and of course the new leadership battle. There's not a lot positive going on in the pound at the moment. We're still alive, but doesn't look great at this point, one wouldn't think. But we're right on that support level. So, pardon me. Who's to say that it's not possible? I've got to be doubting my well, not my analysis. I think my analysis was correct, but it's not getting any help at all in any quadrant in terms of news. Nothing, of course, to do with that. Just let it run its course, and we'll take a good look at it if it does start to rally. If it breaks that support level, then we might have to have a good look at that as well. The Aussie. Let's go to the Aussie. We're talking about the Aussie earlier. We're still in this short trade. And again, I can't see why people would be talking this cross up, apart from the fact that we are at a support level. There's no doubt about that. And it does look very much like a goalpost sitting here, as I can see it. Should that go, that support level, and we'll probably test that again today, one would think. If that were to go, then it brings this level down here into play pretty quickly. And that level is, let's call it on the monthly chart, around about, let's say we got there in that timely fashion. Around about 67.50, something like that. So, there's another 100 pips in this before I would start to change my tack, I would think. So I'm just leaving that run. I've no need to change anything. I could probably consider moving my stops and locking in a bit more profit. Let me take a look at that. But where am I going to put them? maybe put them above here, above this swing, but I'm not going to gain too much, I don't think. I think it's all good. So we'll just leave it where it is. And pardon me, just hope that does break and continue on its merry way down towards that MiG 67 level. In terms of the smaller time frames, would you be wanting to jump into this short? I don't think at this level that's a very bright idea. Yes, there's a potential for this to go again off the daily pivot. Nice rejection of that particular level. But trading into these lows, having travelled all this distance, I don't think that's really a wise counsel at this point in time. I don't think it's a big enough retracement for me to get interested. I'll put it that way. The retracement is on the latest move. Oh, it is 38.2, so it'll have its fans. I would think there'll be fans jumping into that short. Maybe not those who have been bullish, but those who have been selling, like myself. I'm not going to scale back in here. I'm just going to let this run. Maybe I could move my stops down to this area above the weekly pivot. We might consider that. I don't think there's any rush on it. We'll have a look and see what today's price action brings us. So yes, I can see that there is a possible short happening there, and maybe even that was a reasonable risk reward trade to take. If you were trading that, you would have risked. Well, it's a very small one, isn't it, on a 4-hour chart? Wow, I don't know that I'd be trading that, but it does look to be on its way back to this support level. We shall see. No trade for me. Euro. Let's have a look at the euro. Looking a tad bearish there from Asia session onward until we've now reached, of course, that that low area that we set on Friday with a dramatic fall. I'd have to call it that. This was the best part of 90 odd pips. We haven't seen a range run like that on the euro for some time. We're still, ranging. I think let me have a look at that actually. The ATR on indicators, average true range on the euro. Are we on daily chart? No, we're not. We'll have to change that. So it was in the 40s a couple of weeks ago. I haven't checked since. Let's see what it is now. We've managed to climb out of that terrible low volatility area. So 20 days, let's go back a month, that'll do. And you can see that we have climbed out of that rather low 40s and back up here into the mid 50s. Still not great. I would much prefer to see it up into the 80s, 90s. That gives us a lot more room to manipulate intraday. But we'll have to take what we're given, I'm afraid. And what we've been given is a big crash on Friday. This did very much look like a false break, didn't it? And did that even set up a trade? Yeah, kind of did. Yeah, look, it's not a great position to take, but yeah, look, it's a tiny little bar to trade, and you're trading straight into the support level, which is here at 112.83. It's got support over in this area here, I believe. Would have been a risky trade. There's no question about that. But guess what? The risk was very good in terms of reward. Had you managed to land it for about a 13, 14 pip, even if you've got a little bit better up here, put your stops above that level, 20 pips, and currently running about 3.5 to 1 on that, nearly 4 to 1 on that trade. So it would have been a good one had you grabbed it. Why didn't we trade that? And where did we go? When was this? Friday, Thursday, we traded this short. What happened there? Am I still in that trade? I don't know on this account. I'll just check that on my other computer. I didn't think I was in this trade on this account. Obviously, we took a trade there on Wednesday, but my mind is not delivering too much to me, I'm afraid. So let me just check on that and see if we need to manage this one. But it looks like it may not be the case, and I'm just wondering why. I'll have to go back and have a look at that. But certainly we entered short here, and why it would have been on a smaller time frame, of course. Maybe on the Thursday night show. Okay. I think we took our profit. Yeah, that's what's happened there. So no need to do anything on that score. All right, so that's the three majors that I trade: Aussie, pound, and euro. Would I want to be trading the euro at the moment? Look, I think it's a good chance we'll put in a double bottom here by the look of it. We've got an untested daily pivot, so I'd be interested in trading this back to here if I got the right signals. There's there's more than a hint of a hammer sitting there, but that's not enough to trade on its own. A little bit of a double bottom sitting here on a small time frame as well on the hourly chart. To trade this, I'd probably like to see I don't know, something of a trade line through here. It's going to be tough to trade it if it comes back above this level and then retest it, because there's no room between entry and the daily pivot, or indeed, well, the weekly pivot's okay, but there's certainly not enough room to take profit before the daily pivot, one would not think, or one would think. And for that reason, I don't think I'd be wanting to trade this long, unless I suppose, way later in the day we got some price action down here, or even a support line over here at some stage. Maybe we could look to trade a false break back to here, but that's not looking particularly likely at this point. Do I want to trade the euro long? Oh, look, yeah, I'm okay with that. Definitely okay with it, but I don't see right now where that setup is. And we do have a monthly pivot lurking here. I think really my bias is long, but not for a short term, not for a long term. We can see the weekly pivot sitting here. I think if price can get back to this area and put in a lower high, that turns me bearish again. So yeah, I'm thinking that's definitely a consideration. Back to here, weekly pivot test, lower high, seek the short. We shall see. We shall. What else are we looking at? Euro pound's interesting. Kind of looks like it's put in a double top, but a very weak. If this is to be a reversal, it's very very weak at this point. And rather than me seeing a reversal, what I'm seeing here is simply consolidation. Do I actually see a an ascending triangle is the question? I certainly see this triangle. But what if I were to turn this around and use these highs through here? Yeah, it's interesting. Not compelling, but interesting. That's a 4-hour chart. It's suggesting to me that the likelihood is we're going higher on euro pound. And you can be excused for thinking anything's going to rally against the pound, because the pound is under so much stress at the moment. You'd almost be wanting to put anything against it as a long, wouldn't you? I think I'm still of that mindset, but again, sooner or later, you've got to be thinking that the pound's going to catch a bid somewhere. Where? Don't ask me where, but somewhere. The rumor of the Fed doesn't seem to have made any difference. That rumor being that the Fed will cut interest rates, but we're not seeing that. As I said on the Forex Factory, it's tipping that there will be no interest rate cut and no interest rate movement on the US dollar come Wednesday. So that's going to make the markets a little bit interesting, given that I think, well, actually, let's have a look at that. Let's in particular have a look at the euro and how that's been reacting since, well, I said 3 weeks. is around about the area that I believe the market starts to price things in. So 3 weeks out from the announcement. So let's go back 3 weeks, shall we? 1, 2, 3. And what do we see? We see, in my opinion, that is, confirmation here that the market, certainly euro versus the dollar, the market is suspecting that there may, well, it may not be that, right, but it's certainly not a bad way to look at it. This could well be, and that's probably the words I need to use, this could well be the market pricing in a US dollar interest rate cut. Now, I can only share, and I've got no idea what happened on Friday, whether there's been a turnaround or in that particular news sector of that decision-making process, or whether that has made a difference. And whether, and I noticed, as I said, on the Forex factory, that they're now not tipping an interest rate. And maybe that's what we've seen on later in the week. Certainly on Friday, it gained momentum big time with this big bar here. And maybe that is the case. Maybe the market is now reassessing that there will not be an interest rate cut. So that's kind of how it looks to me anyway. Where do we go from here? Well, where did we start? We started down here. And if what I'm saying has got any credence at all, then perhaps we're destined to be down here again. So that rally, if it comes and gives us that lower high, could well be exactly where I want to be. I don't think that's the craziest place to be looking for an order. So that's euro dollar and euro pound. If euro's to go short, is which one's going to be the weakest? That becomes the question on euro pound. So very, very interesting. And I'm struggling for a bias there. I really am. One that I do have a big bias on is Aussie CAD, and I'm just waiting to get into this. Maybe there was an opportunity there on Friday to trade that as a higher low and look for an entry. Certainly that's what I'm looking for at the moment as we come off this level. The reason that I'm keen to trade this long is very much a bigger picture thing. If we have a look, even go out to the monthly time frame, this is a fairly substantial level from a trend line support point of view. And you can see that we've tried to get through that on the month, and we're pulling back off that already, only halfway through the month. That's not to say it can't break, of course, but when you combine it with the horizontal level, which is, around about 92 cents, the figure, it kind of adds a lot of weight to my theory that this is on a bounce point. So yeah, definitely I'll be looking to find an entry here, Aussie CAD long. What do I need to see? Well, really a reversal pattern of some kind, because we have been in a bear trend until this level. So we're looking for something like a double bottom, hammer, inverted head and shoulders, all those sorts of, well-documented candle patterns. This is kind of a tweezer bottom that I'm seeing here, a double bottom if you want to call it that. What I would be looking for is confirmation that that is indeed our bounce point. It hasn't, or did it? What was the low of this candle? 91.79. So yes, we have tested that 92 level and we've rejected that 92 level. This one as well got to 91.86 and again rejected that 92 level. So interesting. And yeah, I'm dead keen to find a higher low here, where I don't really care. 4-hour chart would be better, of course. And as you can see, this trend line here has been broken a couple of times now, and false break perhaps on the downside. A retest here, or indeed the daily pivot, would be best place for me. If we came back to the daily pivot and got a little reversal situation, or reversal bar, a nice candle pattern from my point of view on maybe a 30-minute chart or an hourly chart, I'd definitely be looking to trade this long. Would I want to trade it long now is the question. The answer is no, I wouldn't want to, but would I? Look, you could probably twist my arm, but I'd want to see something fairly decent in terms of a setup. So not just the candle pattern, not just a false break, if you like, although a false break here would look pretty decent if it were to break and hit the top side of this trend line, which is obviously on a bigger time frame, and then get back above here, above the weekly pivot, retest the trend line and the weekly pivot from above. That'd be pretty compelling, in particular if it took this high out. So you can see the market trying to form some sort of momentum here.
Well, FTSE's
I
just
quite
open,
like it.
mate, just to let you
I
know.
really quite like it, but I definitely prefer to see a daily pivot test. The thing is with reversals, when they do come about, you can generally count on the daily pivot being untested in either A, the first move, or B, the second move, because momentum is so strong. Once the hive, the tribe mentality takes hold, and everyone starts to think, "Oh, this is reversing, let's go," they all jump on and they just leave the daily pivot for dead. So that's potentially something that we will see. Maybe it is today. So if I do find a reason to go long here, I would do that. Now, what I wouldn't do is go in at full risk. I'd definitely scale my risk back because of the untested nature of the daily pivot. So maximum half of my maximum risk level is what I'd be taking into that, and that's maximum. That's if I had a really good setup. If I didn't have a great setup, I'd either A, not take the trade, or B, reduce that risk factor even further. But that is probably the one I'm keenest on most at the beginning of this week, and it's Aussie CAD long. What else have we got up our sleeve? Look, pound. Gee, it's tough to be trading the pound at the moment, so I'm going to steer clear of that until I see something at least half decent news on there. That would be good. Aussie Kiwi, we're now out of that trade that we took back here. I trailed my stops late last week, and they've now been hit. And where did I trail them down to here somewhere? I think pretty much where price is at the moment. So that was a nice trade. Finished up a nice trade. Not as nice as I was hoping for. I was hoping that we would break clear of this level. This one here at 104.95 and maybe take on the lows here at least. That was kind of going to be my exit point, but the market saw differently. Would I be interested in getting back into this? Yeah, look, no drama. What would I like to see? Well, I'd like to see the monthly pivot tested and rejected. That would kind of get me interested again. And if that were the case, we've still got this, dominant, if you like, double top sitting here. We've got the lower high that we traded in the first place. So if we were to see another lower high at the monthly pivot, or even equal high here, that would probably get me interested again in trading that. It appears Ash is here, but I can't hear him.
You can't hear me, mate.
Wonder why.
Now
I can. There he is.
Oh, cool. How you doing, buddy?
I'm all right. How long have you been here?
Oh, since the start. I've been listening to your analysis, and there was a few times I thought, oh, maybe he needs a little bit of interjection here, and I interjected. And I thought, oh, he's in the flow, and then I just told you that the market had opened up, and I got nothing. I thought, oh no, he's not in the flow. He can't hear me. So yeah, I'm here, mate. Yeah, interesting start actually to the FTSE. It looks like we might cling on for a little bit of upside here. I'm really looking for downside. I wouldn't trade it long because there are things going on. You referenced what happened on Friday. Retail sales came out much better than expected, or certainly not a bad number. And it does just put the weight on the Fed. You sort of start thinking, why? Why would they now reduce interest rates? The numbers just aren't bad enough. for that to
Well, I
happen.
see
So
that the Forex factories now suggesting that they're not going to.
yeah,
And did you hear what I said about maybe the pricing in of that interest rate cut is now being priced out?
absolutely. Yeah,
I think that looks
absolutely.
to be the
And
case.
it will start being the case. And the FTSE, if I didn't have a couple of shorts in already, I'll be going short here again because the fundamentals just don't seem to match. I mean, the one thing about this, I'll show you my chart. The one thing about this is that we'd really need a genuine breakdown, I think, of some of this price action. I mean, firstly, I think this is the daily, and these are the RSIs in the
I can't
daily,
see
which are,
your charts for some
oh,
reason.
you can't see my screen. Hold on. Oh, that's my fault, mate. That's my fault.
One each.
There we go. That should be better now.
Yeah.
Let's flick it over there. Okay, so yeah, so we can see how flat this RSI is, and it's indicated by the bars anyway. This 5-minute chart is the interesting one because it just as it's managed to close. Prices just managed to close back on the level pretty much. So it would need to break down here. Not sure if we're going to get the floodgates opening today, but it'd be great if we did. And it could happen. But as things started this morning, I was thinking we might well get some further a further push to the upside. But that last bar has just suggested that there are bears still hanging around here. I thought it was quite an interesting rally, I have to say. Here we go. We're starting to break down a bit now. I thought it was quite an interesting rally. Not a bad time to go short, by the way. I don't usually trade breaks of bars, but I think that there's enough evidence that that this is likely to break down, and we may well end up all the way back down here. So there could be a 25 pip shoot for a little bit of profit here to the downside, because things just don't add up. You know, they're not stacking up for this rally. And I was with a friend on the weekend, actually on Friday, when the price action was going on, and he was short euro.
Yep.
And the euro just bounced back a little bit with the FTSE, and I was saying, seems like a dead cat bounce to me. I don't know why people would be buying, away from the dollar effective. I don't know why they'd sell the dollar at this particular stage. There doesn't seem to
I'm the
be.
same. I couldn't work it out. But
Yeah, but you know what? I thought it was quite telling that the FTSE did start to rally, but the um, other side of the market, which is gold, started to come down. You know, and I think that the protection that was put in place with an interest rate cut is probably just starting to dissipate a little bit. You know, I think people are starting to clear out of some of their protection. You know, gold is starting to weaken, and I think gold probably will weaken a little bit more. We'll discuss it later. It's a shame Julian's not in later on, but we'll discuss it later because I still think that gold is a sell. I think that the FTSE is also a sell and hasn't broken down just yet. But as I say, not a bad time to go short. It's a you're probably around about 6 pips away from where you'd really like to get in, but I think this is likely to break down here, because I just don't see the evidence of what could push this in the other direction, except for and I noticed we were talking about the pound, your weekly trade in the pound earlier on. Except for the pound, we had our Tory leadership debates last night, but what was really probably the most interesting is the fact that there's nothing of interest because Boris Johnson wasn't there. The other leadership candidates were, and they are all, asking where Boris, where he is. And the question is, why would he turn up? You know, he's got such a strong lead there, and everybody knows that these TV debates can go one of two ways. And why gamble? You know, why would he bother gambling? Why would he put himself in a position where he could actually lose off the back of a bad TV debate when he's got such a commanding lead? And we're still in the early rounds. You know, I think he said really from quite an early point that he wouldn't be taking part in the debates at this particular stage. But it's likely that he'll take part eventually. I'm just going to draw you a quick line on the FTSE just to show you targets here, and I think we're probably looking at something like that for a target. So I think the FTSE is likely to come all the way down here before we start getting any kind of relief. So then and anybody that's kind of thinking of going long or going short gold, let's say, going long the euro, or going long anything against the dollar, going long the FTSE, you've really got to ask yourself why. Why would you go long here? What's suggesting that this is a long market? Because from all I can see, I'm just going to check out the pivots. So we're through the pivots as well. All I can see is a potential for further downside. I don't really see what is going to boost this market. What's
I've got
going
to
to drive
say,
it forward?
there's only two traders I know of that have got that opinion. One's you, one's me.
Oh, okay.
Everybody else wants to sell the dollar that I've spoken to or seen analysis of.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know either, mate. Maybe we're nuts, but I can't see it either. I can't see why you'd want to be selling US dollar right now.
Well, one of us is going to be wrong by Wednesday, aren't we? I mean,
Mm.
the only other the other thing about it is that a lot of the drive to the downside, it was twofold really. We had a move to the downside in the FTSE, and if I have to bring in a currency because it kind of relates to people a little bit more, well, then we'll talk about the euro. A lot of the reason that we started to get dollar strength right across the board, there's the euro, there's the dollar yen, there's the pound dollar, dollar CAD. The dollar was strengthening on Friday, and the reason it was strengthening on Friday it was twofold. One was because we had retail sales coming out, and I think that there was an anticipation that retail sales probably wouldn't be quite as bad. And what you're going to do, you're not going to continue to buy dollars, sorry, sell the dollar off at such lofty prices up here. When we had the rally in the euro, you're not going to continue to sell the dollar off. So really, the next probable direction is to the downside. So I think there was some positioning going on with that retail sales announcement, firstly. But the second thing is we had a little bit of a ramp up in the Iranian oil story.
Yeah.
And what do people do when that happens? They buy protection. And sometimes it's the yen, sometimes it's the dollar. And if you need to know which it's going to be at any one given time, you've got to think, where's the money? And the dollar and the money right now is still in the dollar, and it's still going to be in the dollar until they lower those interest rates. Then there's probably going to be a little bit of rebalancing going on. But as the carry traders probably start to get a bit more concerned and maybe get out of their dollar longs. But right now, they seem to me anyway to be fairly comfortable with a dollar long. And the other thing obviously is gold, and gold is probably a little bit more telling than anything else, because gold was also weakening at the same time. And you'd think if there was a problem in the world order, i.e., a potential conflict, then people would be probably going to gold as a safe haven. But I think because of the dollar story specifically being focused on Wednesday and that FOMC rates potential rate cut, which is well, as you say, we're probably the only two that don't believe it's going to happen. But the potential rate cut or rate hold, then why would you really go to anything else but the dollar if you believe that they are going to hold? And the evidence here suggests that we're not the only ones. It looks like the market is currently in agreement with us. It's not in
It's
full
come our
agreement
way.
because
Yeah,
nothing.
definitely.
It's come our way. It doesn't look like anything's really broken down, except for the euro. The euro really did break down quite significantly. And again, you got to sort of wonder, why would you trade euro long anyway? There's nothing really too positive out there with the euro. The euro is in all sorts of trouble. It's we got Draghi today at 6, which that may just give us something of a turnaround. It might be that people buy into that announcement. It might be that Draghi says something that make people buy into it.
I guess, and I said earlier, it's really the opening statement of this forum. But if he's going to
Right.
make an impact and set the tone, then maybe that opening statement or opening address will have something in it that the market goes, and reacts. So yeah, initial thoughts were, well, he's only making opening address. Nothing too much will be on the table there, but perhaps I'm wrong there. Maybe he is actually going to set the tone for the entire forum, or as he sees it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he's due to say. Did you read on the ECB website? Did you? Is that how you know that?
That was just the Forex Factory again, I think.
Okay.
I just went into the detail.
Okay.
The detail said that it's the opening address of this forum.
Right. Right. FTSE 100 is back at the daily pivot, so this is a great area to go short. Anyway, you know, this is this would be I think a much more likely scenario. The only other thing that may happen here is that we might just get some price action, which doesn't really go anywhere, because oftentimes on a Monday you just get a little bit of a freezing. I mean, this is undoubtedly an area to go short, and my preference is short. And as I say, I'd be going short myself if I didn't have a couple already in the market. But what can happen on a Monday is that we meander. It's still not a bad area to go short, I don't think, because you can put stops at the highs and expect, if there's meandering, that the downside will probably have enough pressure if we pop up to come back down to these levels, regardless. So there is some weakness out there, and as I say, I can't find the reason to go long, except for the pound, and the pound didn't really, the leadership debates didn't really set the world alight. So I'm not sure what the driver would be for the pound to weaken significantly anyway. It's going to be difficult for the pound while Boris Johnson's in the lead, because the rhetoric that he was touting about was for happy, effectively, to go for this hardline Brexit. So the market is not going to like that.
No, and it just cannot catch a bid at the moment. There's every bit of data that comes out is poor. Every fundamental reason is pointing towards pound being under continued pressure. The only thing, is the strong support level that we're at that's holding it up, I think.
Right. Interesting as well. There's a little report that David Cameron is helping Boris Johnson with his leadership campaign, which I find quite interesting. Now, what could be quite fascinating about that is that Cameron obviously is a Europhile. Now, I don't know whether that's going to have a play, or whether it's just that they're a couple of mates, and the Bully Boys Club kind of comes back into play, and Cameron isn't really that bothered about the whole course of the EU anyway, because it doesn't really affect him, or whether he's going to have a little bit more sway on Boris Johnson's policy. I don't know what could happen here, but it's saying here that there is a theory going around that Boris could be trying to persuade Cameron to take a seat in the House of Lords and serve in his cabinet. So I suppose if Cameron did fancy a seat in the House of Lords, then cozying up with Boris wouldn't be a bad choice. It doesn't look like anybody else is really got a hope. I've got to say, the one person that I thought might just about get enough support would be Jeremy Hunt. But after the first round, I mean, Boris Johnson practically beat all of the candidates to put together. All their votes put together, he practically outdid every single one of them in total. So I don't know whether there is going to be much of a true battle anyway. I think it could be an inauguration, which basically happened last time. Everybody pulled out, and it was just basically an inauguration. But I don't think people are going to pull out. But I think by everything but name, this is just going to be a bit of a walk in the park by all accounts. And if Cameron's on his side, that guy's got form. He's an experienced campaigner. He knows how to win a Tory leadership. He knows how to win a general election. So how is he going to lose? That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be an option at the moment, does it? I don't know that much about it, but from what I hear on the news, the nightly news, everything's sort of pointing that way. And when's that by, mate? What's the date?
The end of July,
Right.
we get the
Okay.
announcement. So we
So
got a
I
little while
suppose
left,
in
but
that
we
regard,
do have another
anything can
round
happen.
of candidates that are going out
They
pretty
say that
soon.
a week's a long time in politics, so anything can happen, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah, and this is the thing, and I think one thing, one aspect of that is experience tells you that that things can change fairly dramatically, and it's just going to be, I think that there's going to be some mud searching from
yes,
the
there'll
other
be some
candidates to
muckraking
see.
going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, just see, can they get anything on him? But you see, Boris Johnson's very similar to Trump in the way that things just don't stick to him. Um, Probably because he's got this air of complacency and an air of just not caring. He's just not that bothered
Mm.
about what people say. When it came down to the whole drugs scandal, every MP pretty much that's been asked if you took drugs when you were younger has come out and said that they did.
Of course they
But
did.
when Boris
You
Johnson was
idiot.
asked, what's that, sorry, mate?
So they'll be saying, "Of course I did, you idiot." What do you think of
Well,
that?
yeah, do you know, this all started because Michael Gove has been caught out taking cocaine, and it it's blotted his copybook. Fortunately for him, some of the others have come out and said the same thing. But Question Time on Thursday, which is a show where the politicians basically face off against each other with a studio audience. All the politicians on that particular show that aren't Tory candidates, but just politicians and MPs, said that they took drugs in some way or another. Some of them just said they tried it when they were in university and they were sick, but they still tried it. So they showed some weakness. But the interesting thing is when Boris Johnson said Boris Johnson was asked whether he tried it. He said he was offered it once, but he sneezed, so it didn't go up his nose. And he just manages to make it funny. He just manages to make it kind of very light, and
Yeah,
that's where
turns the
he
intent around. Yes.
he does, and where Donald Trump uses playground tactics, Boris Johnson's very, very good at refocusing the argument onto humour and making it seem a lot lighter and less important than it actually is. Where the other MPs that are in the leadership race, they flap a bit, and it just makes them seem guilty, and like they could be doing something seriously harmful for the country, and it seems that they're not fit for office. So I just don't know how that's going to turn, mate. And one hopeful that I had was a guy called Rory Stewart, but it seems that it might be a bit early for him. He's quite eccentric. He's also a Euro supporter. He's a supporter of the EU. Voted to remain in the campaign. Um, Very intelligent guy and very able. Speaks well. Kind of come out of nowhere, and that's what happened with Cameron. Cameron was just somebody that came out of nowhere. But I think the thing about Cameron was that he was against mainly people that were in kind of the generation above him in the Tory leadership, and he was different because he was youthful, and I think having that kind of young outlook probably put him into a bracket that got him support across the board because the older guard were thinking, where's the future, and the younger guard he appealed to the younger guard. But with this lot, they are all around about the 40 to 50 mark. Boris Johnson's a shade older, but he's still not old by any stretch, when it comes down to politician kind of age standards, and
Yep.
he's probably at just about the right age to take the reins. So he could be bad for the pound, and that could be the only thing that could drive the FTSE in the opposite direction. But certainly for right now, I would suspect that the FTSE will probably follow the rest of the market in the way that the dollar's going, and weaken as the dollar strengthens. That's the way that I see it at the minute.
Yeah, well, where the dollar goes to this week is going to be a very, very interesting question. I think whatever happens with the FOMC statement, there's generally some reaction. And the statement is likely to indicate, in my humble opinion, that usual stuff. We'll react on whatever the data tells us to do. Blah blah blah. But whether they then put a further emphasis on the word cut interest rates, or an inference of any kind, that they are leaning in that direction, I suppose is the terminology I'm looking for, then maybe we see the dollar plateau or something. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think you're
I
right,
don't
mate.
see.
I think that's fair. I think that the expectation probably right now is that the we don't get the interest rate cuts, and sorry, yeah, we don't get the interest rate cut, and that would most likely affect the market negatively. And the dollar is much more likely to strengthen. But I'll make you right on the fact that what could actually stabilize the price on the dollar, and maybe stabilize the stock markets, certainly in the near term, is a intimation that interest rate cuts are coming. Um,
Hmm.
what I wonder would is more likely to happen, though, is that, why would you say they're coming if you're not going to do it next time round? Why wait? If you think they're coming, why wouldn't you just go? They don't need to come; they are here. And I wonder whether they're more likely to um, intimate that they're still listening to the market rather than anything else. Which is, that kind of non-committal comment will not help the markets. I suspect that's gonna affect the
Oh,
markets fairly negatively.
they'll say that for sure. I mean, they say that, pretty much at the end of every statement anyway. It's a cut and paste thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
that will be there. Don't have any doubt that that won't be there. We'll continue to watch the, economic data and all the rest of it, and the global economy, and unemployment, and blah 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 blah. So, don't expect that will change. The only thing that's likely to change is whether they even do infer that there's cuts coming, or whether they say we've decided that the numbers are really really good. Why would we be thinking of interest rate cuts? How would we know what they're going to say, really, at the end of the day,
yeah, yeah,
in that regard? But that's and the reason we're talking about that is what sort of direction we should be having, you know, leading into the FOMC and leading out of the FOMC.
yeah,
And that's the hard
yeah,
bit, of course.
yeah,
Into is
absolutely.
even difficult now because they've changed tack.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, we have no leadership candidates from the Labour Party to rival whoever it is that takes the Tory leadership. So that's also going to be um, net negative and net positive for any Tory leadership candidate. So that still hangs over us. We also have Mark Carney as well, don't we? And Mark Carney's really been talking up the pound quite recently, and some of the data has been fairly positive. I have to say, it's certainly not negative. With the pound, it still looks like there is a um, there still looks like there's some room for interest rate rises from the UK, and where we've got interest rate cuts speak right across the board. It's not just in America, but right across the board. They're talking about further stimulus in China. They're talking about stimulus in the Euro bloc as well. I'm not sure if they're going to run out of weapons fairly soon, but it certainly seems that way. Mark Carney out on Tuesday may well be talking about interest rate hikes, and that could well be the positive driver for the pound. If there are all these stipulations and speculations that we're getting interest rate weakness across the board and stimulus across the board, then you're going to need to find a currency that might actually be going in the opposite direction, and it may well be the pound, and it may well be that could be the spark that lights the torch paper. I mean, obviously we've got Brexit, in and around, but we know better than anything to strengthen a currency is an interest rate
Yep.
hike. So regardless of what happens with Brexit, there may well be an interest rate hike. Speaking of an interest rate hike, anyway, from the Bank of England, and that could strengthen the pound because they're getting a bit fed up. I think Mark Carney's just getting a little bit perturbed that he doesn't really know what to do. He's like, the numbers and the data suggest that I need to raise interest rates, but Brexit is this huge hangover, and his hands are tied. It's what do they do in the meetings? They go and have a few biscuits and go, shall we raise interest rates? What's the data like? Pretty good. Yeah, hold on a minute, Mr. Carney. We've still got Brexit. Oh, yeah. Okay, meeting adjourned. Let's meet again next month.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Make sure you get the custard creams next time. And that's pretty much it. I don't know. I don't know what else they can do, but I think he's getting a little bit fed up, and I think he's getting a little bit impatient on the whole Brexit thing. And I think he's looking at it and thinking, regardless of what's going on with the Brexit rhetoric, the scenario and situation out here is just not that bad. So
play the cards you've got.
Yeah, play the cards you got. Play what's in front of you.
Couldn't get him to do it today, could you? Couldn't move that meeting forward by any chance.
Unfortunately not. I don't have that kind of influence in the UK, unfortunately, mate. But there's every chance that he would say something or do something before anybody else anyway. So that maybe that's, as I say, that could be the spark that lights the torch paper for the pound, and maybe we start to see some strength. FTSE 100 is holding on currently to its level, to that daily pivot, which is again suggesting, and I would hold by it. If you've managed to go short, if you've got short, I wouldn't be too concerned, because this doesn't look to me like a market which is going to explode to the upside. My whole position right now is do I hedge and take a long rather than being concerned with a short? But I wouldn't do that. I don't eat, but no matter what the charts are doing, I don't see the reason for taking a long, and I think that there's probably more likely that if anything, I mean, there might be a little drive to this point here, but there might even be another short kind of from my perspective place up here if it doesn't break down at this point. But I think we're aiming down here at some point in the near term anyway. But is it Tuesday? No, it's Wednesday, isn't it? FOMC. So yeah, Wednesday might be might be a little bit of a clearer signal. So we might be waiting till Wednesday before we do anything, mate. I don't think I'll be trading for a couple of days.
Yeah, look, it could be that way. As I said, with the pound virtually out for me in terms of tradability, I think I just want to wait and see what happens. And I don't even know with what, because if we've got to wait till the end of July for the leadership thing, but maybe that's already there. FOMC, maybe Carney is probably it, really. So I don't really want to make any moves on the pound until Carney does talk, until we get that news delivered. Aussie, I'm still in the short. I don't need to add to that. I don't want to trade against it.
Yeah, I saw that, man. I think that's a great trade, isn't it? Because of the potential weakness. I mean, why would you go long again with anything against the dollar right now?
Well, I kept saying this about the Aussie. I said, I cannot find a reason to go long the Aussie. There is no reason. And well, that's turned out to be quite accurate. And if you're trading it, every single day, it's bouncing off the daily pivot, and it looks like it's doing it again today.
Right. So great for those short-term traders. That if people trade that, they'll be trading that on the wave rider, but might be an hourly wave rider bounce point. Those daily pivots.
Yeah, look, it looks a little bit different today, I've got to say, because we do have a little tweezer bottom sitting there on a 30-minute chart, and we've now got a higher low sitting there on a 30-minute chart. So that may not yet be panning out, but again, it may give another opportunity as well. I don't really know, but I don't need to add to my position on that. The euro really is the only one I've got well, sorry, that's not true. Aussie CAD. And and I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but I think the CAD is likely to be weaker than the Aussie, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I can see oil in trouble. Iran. What's your take on that? What's the Iran thing going to do to oil? It's likely to rally, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it depends on how that escalates, but it certainly seems that world leaders are on top of Iran pretty quick. You know, they've the UK has come out and said the same thing with Jeremy Corbyn on the other side of the argument yet again. You know, saying that we need more evidence, but the Conservative Party have said what a ridiculous statement that is, and that they're backing the US evidence, and I think their own evidence as well. By all accounts, it seems that there is evidence across the board that from the UK as well that Iran were responsible. The EU have come out and said the same thing. So it seems that, and I think Canada, is it Canada?
Don't know.
Not sure if it was Canada actually, but certainly the Western countries have come out in support of the United States and effectively damned Iran for their attacks. You've got Saudi Arabia in that area as well. It just depends on how that escalates. I don't know whether there'd be enough pressure, from the Western cultures to stop Iran doing what they're doing, because they are particularly angry with the United States for putting the sanctions on that they have, and that might just be enough to keep tensions pretty rife in that particular area. So so it depends if they try it again. You know, now they've been seen. If they may well continue to deny it, but they might just be going, well, we're not going to get away with it because they've got cameras everywhere. They've got satellites on the tankers.
Yeah, it's
So
like trying to rub a cricket ball with sandpaper, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really is, and you kind of like wonder whether they care, and that's what it will come down to. If they don't care and they continue to attack these tankards, then the tension, the escalation of tension in that particular region will heighten significantly, because all of a sudden then you'll have military guards going on those oil tankards, and there could be some a few skirmishes in that area. And if that's to happen, then you have to think, why wouldn't oil rally off the back of that? And if that's to happen, wouldn't that potentially drive the Canadian dollar up rather than down?
Yes, it would. And now I'm going back. I'm reassessing my own analysis. Actually, I'm going back to the first week of the month, I think it was, where we saw very good, strong news on the CAD. The unemployment rate fell 0.3%. A lot of jobs created, and that's the last thing. The trade balance was good. That's right. Everything was really positive for the CAD, and the oil tumbling tempered that somewhat. So if oil did just precisely as you just described, then yes, the CAD would absolutely rocket, because there's really good fundamental news behind the CAD.
Right.
And okay, I really, and I've been saying this from last week as well, I was very keen on trading Aussie CAD long, and this is why. I'll just lock my chart on. Do it. Okay, with any luck, you're now on my chart. And this is the reason why, because we were at a very, very strong confluence area.
Yeah.
This big trend line on the monthly chart, which has held the market up 2 or 3 times, as well as this horizontal level, as well as the fact that it's 92 cents the figure. I thought that this was absolutely a bounce point, but the circumstances we've just described are making me very, very have a second look at that. Look, technically it's still there. There's no question about that. And I just wonder if it's possible. Is it actually possible for this to rally based on what we've just said?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, do you know, it's one of those, isn't it, that just it may well, and it might well be another one of those things that it's going to be about timing. It could rally, and maybe it pops through the trend line first, and then gives you an even more significant signal if it pops back up again. But certainly timing wise, it doesn't look like it's going to be before Wednesday, if anything. I think everybody's waiting on this FOMC, and I think if FOMC does leave interest rates where they are, then that probably will help the CAD as well. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to go with that, but we've got to watch those tensions with Iran. They've gone a little bit quiet after the initial furore that was involved, and now we just have to wait and see. So I'm a little distracted here because the FTSE's just manages to kind of grind out a fairly decent hold on the short-term timeframes here.
I can see that.
Very, very short-term timeframes. I mean, we're looking at the 5-minute chart here, but I still like the short on this. But as I said, it might be from the upper line rather than the lower line. But we've managed to boost through there. Could find some problems at the weekly pivot. I think we need to let this establish on shorter term timeframes. Sorry, longer term timeframes. Interestingly, as well with WTI, even though it was a week ago, the bar hasn't really been broken down. When we kind of look at this here. This is the weekly chart here on WCI. Not last week, sorry, but the prior week's hammer still is there, and it's still kind of sticking there. This price action last week wasn't particularly bullish. Obviously, it hasn't really picked up from there, but by the same token, it hasn't broken down.
Yeah.
So that hammer still lives and breathes, and I wonder whether we just need a little bit more information on this before we really call this one way or the other. What may happen is that we could get a slightly just a dip down, little bit lower price action, touch this point before we start to fly up. But I still think that I still think WTI is probably getting fairly near a buy area rather than anything else. That looks pretty good for Confluence, and that's just going to be down to whether it bounces down this week or next week. But if it does, I would say that that WTI somewhere around about 45, maybe between 45 and yeah, let's call it 45, somewhere around about the 45 level is going to be as low as this is going to go in this particular phase. So could bounce here. Maybe there's not so much here that would suggest that we've got enough confluence, but certainly dipping down a little bit further, then I think there's going to be a bit more interest in WTI. Let's just check pivots as well. Where's the monthly? Well, monthly's above right now, so yeah, we could be.
Sandwich there, isn't she?
Yeah, I think we could be waiting on that for a little while, but yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too bad. It's certainly stable, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it dip just a little bit further. But I don't think it's going to dip too much more significantly than 45, personally.
Fair enough, bud. And of course, the Iran situation will have a lot to do with that.
Yes, it could. Yes, it could, and it's one of those that, where you're probably waiting a little while with the Aussie CAD just to get a little bit clearer on what might drive it. I wonder if it comes down to oil, that 45 will be enough to get traders involved in the market, just in case there is an escalation of tensions. Because if there is, that looks pretty cheap at 45. And if there's an escalation of tensions, then it's not going to hang around. So I wonder whether there might be some traders that are just quite happy to speculate and buy into it rather than waiting.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm having a look at the monthly chart at the moment and trying to get a handle on all of that. 45 certainly seems to be a struggle point, but I think the biggest struggle point is probably a little bit lower, maybe 43, 42 and a half-ish.
Okay, so yeah, somewhere in that region, you think?
Yeah. I think that's, well, let's say if it got to that level, I wouldn't be bearish.
Let's have a quick look at that level as well. So you're saying 43.
Yeah, 42-ish, 42 and a half, 43-ish, something like that. It's not clear.
Yeah, that is quite low, isn't it? I mean, the only thing with it with the 45 as well is that it seems to run into this low here, which
Yeah.
seems to be a fairly decent point. And if that low, as I say, does have confluence with potentially two trend lines, one coming along there and one coming along here, then that looks like a sweet spot. I mean, I'm not saying it is, but
That's the
it
monthly
certainly
chart,
looks.
right?
That's a monthly chart, yeah.
Wow, how does this work? See, if I draw those same two lines on my chart, what's that level you've got where they cross?
That's 45.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I'm only about 50 pips below that, I suppose.
So you're 40, yeah. I mean, you know, this line is quite thick, so it might be a shade below that.
Yeah, I'm just going back to 2008 and that double bottom sitting there. That's a pretty strong one. We've already nearly had a look at that in when was that? Back in December. We nearly had a look at that, and that's the second test of the trade line or trend line as well, right there. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, do you know the other thing is that this level down here, the 42.5, let's say, that's the low of last year. So it's possible that that it comes down to that point as well. I'm just going to draw a fib on that as well, just to see what that suggests. Yeah, you see the fib does suggest this level. So there's two levels, and I think that there's probably going to be some people interested here. In fact, there are people interested here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting bars that give us this.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be whether it can start to get above that bar. Similar-ish looking bar down here. Not it's a spinning top, but certainly suggests that there's a bit of indecision at that point. This one doesn't suggest indecision per se. It's much more bullish, and it's going to be whether it can take out that upper level. So to my mind, at this particular point, if it takes out and holds above 55, I'd say, then we're probably going to be moving to the upside on oil, and it could be a fairly significant move on oil as well. So we're looking at 55 to maybe crack into this trend line above here again. If it doesn't hold this level, then I'll be looking at around about 45 to see whether it manages to hold around here. And if it does, then I think that wouldn't be a bad point to look at some shorter term timeframes to see whether you can get a pinpoint entry. Short term timeframes, as in the 4 hour and the hourly, probably. Maybe the anything less than the hourly would be, I think, a little bit foolhardy. But looking at a 4 hourly would probably be the better option, because when we look at this price action here on the 4 hourly, we didn't take out this high significantly, so that's okay. That hasn't suggested that we would have got caught into a trade. Maybe we would have at this point. I don't know that taking out that high, there might have been some people interested here. But if they did get in there, then they would have been able to take their trade off at that particular point. So maybe that's why it's now weakening after the breakdown. But I think looking at the 4 hourly, if it breaks down again, would be a fair time frame to ascertain whether you've got a trade or not.
Fair enough, mate. I'm not going to argue with that. That's for sure. What did we say about gold? You were interested in Julian's opinion, and I've got Julian's opinion in front of me, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
If you
Okay.
want to know what it is.
I would like to know what it is. I mean, in fact, before you tell me his opinion, just to not colour my opinion, I'll tell you my opinion and see. I don't think it's going to be an agreement, because he was quite bullish on gold. But my opinion of gold is that it's bearish. Now, my price was at 1345, which was around here, and it did actually break those particular levels, but I don't. I think it's going to struggle to get higher here. And when I consider the fundamentals of what could drive gold, yes, this Iranian issue could continue to show gold as a bit of a safe haven, but I see a fairly overextended trend up here. And I see a potential of an FOMC rate hold, and data already coming out suggesting that that hold is much more likely. So I am bearish gold, and I think this is a pretty good level to be bearish from as well. Again, I'd want to see some shorter term time frames and see what they did. Let me just check the 4 hour here. See, the 4 hour, to my mind, is breaking down to a degree. I don't have a clear signal as yet, and I think the clear signal is much more likely to come if we break down. I mean, this is a little bit tenuous, but I think that there is probably enough evidence here to suggest that it would be a good early punt on gold. But I think if we break this level down here, then it's going to be probably more significant. So 1332 for the sell here wouldn't be a bad selling opportunity in my humble opinion. But let's see what happens. But yeah, what's Julian's take? I know he was probably fairly bullish, right?
No. He agrees with you. Looking at the gold market, there is a tendency for the metal to decline for the next few days of June. The charts support this, but will be affected by what happens to the US dollar. So I will leave it up to you, your judge, blah, blah, blah. The chart has clearly rejected the 1350 level last week, and that will act as a big resistance going forward. So he's on board with you, at least for the next few days.
Okay, all right. I mean, it's interesting because my opinion on gold is much more longer term, whereas I know Julian is probably a little bit more on top of the nuance with gold. So when I was calling it last week for lower, I was calling it last week really again, from 2 weeks ago at 1345, and it still stood, and it was just really then a case of trying to get the entry. Now, if anybody got into it off the back of some of these pivot bounces, then they would have been taken out. Obviously, the pivots did kind of come into play. I think we were potentially talking about a bounce off the weekly pivot. There's a chance that you wouldn't have got taken in if you were trading a signal bar, if you like, a master candle, because this didn't really kind of give you a decent entry. But we are under the weekly pivot actually significantly. I didn't even consider that, but now we're under the weekly pivot. We're under the daily pivot as well. We've probably got enough price action to suggest that this isn't a bad place. And if anybody has got in here, then my play on it would be take some profit if it gets down to this level again, because it might be that it we actually get a true reversal pattern coming down, and it could take a little while, and then popping back up again and giving us something of a head and shoulders pattern before it breaks down. So that is a possibility, but I do think that there's a trade here down into this level, into 1322 actually. So I said 1332, but 1322. So coming down to 1322, taking profit and moving stops to break even, I think would be a decent trade, because if it pops back up again and takes you out, no big deal. Wait for another signal and see if there's a breakdown there. You won't get quite the same price, but it just makes things a bit safer, and then see if it breaks down. I think there's a chance of that, mate. I think there's a chance of that. The only thing with leaving this late and looking for gold to weaken later in the picture, it might then start, and I'll have to see what the date on that would be. Actually, no, that's towards the end of June. That would still be okay. That would still be okay. I was going to say that it might start leading us into the next FOMC rate decision. So that would be a bit of a concern. But it is struggling, mate. And actually, looking at it, it looks like there's some liquidity coming into gold. When we look at this on a 5-minute chart, yeah, it's starting to get kind of twitchy, which does suggest that there is enough liquidity to drive this one down now. So I think 1322 may well be a target even by the end of the day.
Yeah, I can't see it happening, but I'd love to see a daily pivot test before that did happen, because that would get me interested. If nothing else, the range has come, the crosses or the pair, commodity, call it whatever you want to call it, has come back into that range between 1 or 13.44 ish and 13.20, which is the level you were talking about as well. So
Yeah,
a lower high there gets me interested as well.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm not sure that's going to happen.
And quickly back to the FTSE as well. FTSE also now starting to look a little bit weak from the weekly pivot. People might want to wait until we get under this daily pivot. Could be looking at inverted head and shoulders, but that is a 5-minute chart. And when we put some different context into play and look at this on a 15, the 15 is starting to put in some fairly strong bar signals that suggest that that this is as high as this is going to go. So choppy morning so far, mate. Choppy first, near hour does suggest that the FTSE may well be choppy for the day, but my particular bias is for continued downside, and I think a clear signal on the 15-minute chart that may well get me interested to add to this short. In actual fact, I don't particularly like the hourly. But that may well give me some encouragement to add to the short, and it might just be that rather than entering here, just enter just below the daily pivot. It's not that far away. I think there's plenty of room to come down. So yeah, liking the FTSE for some weakness as well.
Right, mate. We might wrap it up then and come back and do the later show, which of course is in 2 hours and 4 minutes or 3 minutes and 50 seconds from now.
Yeah.
And we'll be joined, of course, by the boss man. We'll be joined by Ainsley, and as we know, no Julian tonight, but the rest of us will be there in number and in force. Not sure I'm going to be changing my mind too much at the moment, but anything can happen in 2 hours, so we'll wait and see.
Cool, man. All right, buddy. Well, I will speak to you later on. We'll be back same trade time, same trade channel tomorrow. And we'll see how these go. So we're short on gold, short on the FTSE. From my perspective, you've got a nice short in play on the Aussie dollar, and we're waiting for some information on the euro, but it's still looking kind of bearish. And you're interested in Aussie CAD long.
Yeah, I was. I'm having second thoughts on that, but technically it's looking okay at the moment. I'll have another in-depth look at that in the show tonight.
Great stuff. All right, buddy. I'll speak to you 2 hours, right?
Right, mate. Happy days.